So this is a voiceover of a time-lapse painting done in Procreate. This one was based on some of my old artwork from 2006. So I knew what kind of butterfly I wanted. So I didn't do like a silhouette of the wings. I just straight in sketched the wings of a tiger swallowtail from reference. But then to do the body pose, I go in with a couple of silhouettes to get the pose that I like. The original pose from the artwork from 2006 was just kind of boring, so I wanted to try something different. I wanted it to look almost like he was coming in for a landing onto the plant. I found some pictures of greyhounds stretched out. Greyhounds have like the best legs for reference because they're so long and lanky. So did that silhouette, and then I also did silhouettes of the flowers. I wanted to do milk thistles for this one. I tried a technique of putting down the color and then taking the smudge tool to smudge out to get that fluffiness, almost fur-like. It's worked on some things, didn't really work on the flowers. So I go back with a brush and kind of draw that in. So doing that a little bit differently, not doing a sketch on the flowers. Adding in the green for flowers, same thing, just a smaller brush, and line those in. And then I've turned my silhouette down and sketched down, and then I'm adding color on top. But then I realized, oh yeah, I forgot to do like a final sketch. So I go back, and the top layer I do a cleaned up sketch. And I did change the face a little bit. I noticed I used liquify to kind of smush that face a little bit. It was looking a little too long. And I'm using my newer painting that I did the other day as reference to make sure that the dragon is within that same style or that same kind of world. So their belly scales are the same, and the spikes on the back are the same style, and face is similar. And here I'm just, again, cleaning up that final sketch. I realized that the feet and hands are a little too big, so I used liquify to shrink those down some. I found that the liquify tool is really helpful for changing shape. You can use the select tool, and then you can move things around that way too, which is what I did for a long time. But then I discovered liquify, and I love that tool. I use it so much now to get shapes and proportions and everything kind of in the right spot. So again, just going back over the sketch because I accidentally, skipped that step. I had to reference my own artwork to remember, like, what did I do again? How did I do this? I'm one of those people that if I don't do something every single day, I will forget how I did it. So I have to go back and look at other artwork I've done and go, oh, I liked that. How did I do that? So I'll have to go back through layers or the video. Then I just outlined the whole sketch, color dropped in. And then on the same layer, I did all my colors on the same layer this time. For the black and the wings and the little stripes, I used like a fur texture brush. It's hard to see here, but when you zoom in, it gives it a really cool texture that's a lot like that soft fuzziness that butterfly wings have. Just doing the belly scales. I've done one layer on top of everything in multiply mode and added in some of the shadows. And then here I'm adding in the shadows of the wings, making those lines of the wings a little darker and making the blacks darker as well. Also add in the other colors on the wings. The tiger swallowtails have some really cool like blue and red on the end of their wings. Not just yellow and black. So going back here over the black, again, just making it darker because it is a very dark color on them, and adding just a little more detail to the wings, adding a little few more like folds. Going over and doing the eye, and then creating a layer on top of everything, turning it to overlay, grabbing white, and then adding in highlights. Like on the legs and the belly to make that belly look like it's rounded. It's a really nice effect. Finished off the eye as well. Now I'm going back over the wings to add more highlights. I use a small textured brush for this. It's like a chalk brush, I believe. And just getting those lines of the wing to really pop. Adding in some shadows and highlights to the cheek and the face. Struggled with that one quite a bit, kept changing it. Did the blur tool, or used the smudge tool to kind of smudge that cheekbone. It takes me a while to finally get that to where I like it. And adding in some more bright white on the tail, and shadows and highlights on all the spines, down the back, little spikes. This, you can't really see it, but when you zoom in, it's got a lot of detail. adding in some more shadows at the tail, and then I go back to the flowers, do a multiply layer on top, pick a nice pink and start adding in the shadows to the flowers. Kind of messy and loose at this point, and I'll add more details as I go. Grab a little bit darker pink and a smaller brush and really deepen that dark pink color. And the milk thistles almost have like a fur-like look to them, so I'm painting this almost the same way I would do fur, by doing different little small fine strokes. Overlay layer on top, clipping mask down to the flowers, and then I go in with a white and start adding in highlights. And then I go back, I notice they have these cool little shapes to them. I'm using a reference photo for the milk thistle, so I go back, add a new layer on top, and start adding in some more pinks, trying to get those little fluffy bits correct. Spent a lot of time on the flowers here because I was trying to make sure I got everything, the detail right, and made it look like a real flower. I even went darker with the shadows. Notice my reference photo got pretty dark. And then big blocky colors for the background. I try several different ones until I'm happy. Just using a big square brush, multiple colors of green, some pinks, yellow, and then doing Gaussian blur to blur it out. I struggle with this quite a bit, as you can see. I try several different ones with different colors, placing the pinks and the yellows in different spots, until I'm finally happy with one, then just Gaussian blur it out so it looks like there's like a depth of field going on. And I decided to add, or I'd forgotten actually to add like some scale texture. So I did a layer right above the base colors and add in the same skin texture that I did the last painting. And again, you can't really see it unless you're zoomed in, but it makes a difference in the painting. I just turned that layer to overlay. And here, doing just some real bright highlights on like the belly scales. I did like the bounce light on the feet, a little bit of pink coming in on the legs. Do some stark white around like the edges of the wings, kind of brighten everything up a little bit. And then I copy that back wing, and then I do Gaussian blur to make the back wing look like there's some movement. Then I do a new layer set to screen, and add really bright, like bounce light, almost like that rim lighting around the dragon. And I realized I'd go back to the flower and adding the shadow of the stems, shadow on that flower in the very back, and then adding in a little bit of rim lighting there. I create a whole new layer like I did before, and I'll show this in the layer breakdown, where I drop a solid color on top of the body. I picked sort of like a brownish color. Then I make that into a mask, and I go back and erase areas that I like. Add in some lighting effects, some bouquet in the back of the painting. Brush a little green with like the soft airbrush over key parts of the body, like the tip of the wing and the tail, to kind of set it more in the painting. Okay, now we have the layer breakdown for this painting. One thing I've also added at the very end, I've added noise to the dragon and some noise to the flowers. Very subtle, but it definitely gives it a more photography sort of feel, like this is a photo you took of this creature and not just a digital painting. Here I think I've got most of my layers are combined, but I can kind of show some things. Like that little subtle, it's just a layer above everything set to normal, and just using an airbrush, I take some of the green of the background, and you see when it's off, just little tiny bit around the tail, a little bit on the edge of the wing, and that just helps to sit the dragon into the photo or the painting, so it looks more like he's part of the environment rather than just like a cutout scene, if that makes sense. So here's my layer here with the bouquet, and I have that layer set to luminosity, and feel free to play around with different layers. There's some really cool things you can do, especially if you're doing something that's, a fantasy piece. Like that linear light looks pretty cool. Even hard light kind of brings it up a little bit. Light and color, I use that one quite a bit, but I just like luminosity for this one. I've got my signature on one layer, and then the flowers have been combined down, and then the background here. So go back to one that hasn't been combined quite so much. And you can see here I did shrink the dragon considerably from like this one. I did that because I'll probably offer prints in both styles. But I did that so he looked more like the other dragon, like they were part of the same kind of world, because he was a little bit bigger. He ended up being a little too big. Let's see, now these are still combined down, so I'm going to go back to my gallery and find, so that's how you start making duplicates. It's finding the original and which one you did stuff with. Okay, so this one, for the most part, not everything is combined down, but some of it is. So I've got my colors on one layer. I have in this one combined down the shadow and the overlay. I just combine down like that to save space. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. If your iPad can handle having a bunch of layers, because I typically have a lot, then yeah, you don't have to combine them down. But what I do is I will make a duplicate and then combine down layers, so that way if I mess something up I can go back and change it. But my iPad can't handle every single layer if I had it just all on one. So here's where I added the solid color. And again, it's really subtle, but it just helps to give a sense of realism to the piece. And I clipping masked that down. I picked kind of a tan color, and I have this layer actually set to hue. Then I have the opacity turned way down. As you can see, if I turn it up, it gives it more of an orangey glow, which really doesn't look bad, but for the sake of the style that I was going with, I just turned it down. And then I make that a layer mask. Then I go in, when you're on the layer mask upper layer, black actually helps to, it erases part of the layer, white will put it back. So I go with a black brush. I use like a soft airbrush to remove it in areas that I want to be a little bit brighter, like the face, the top of the wing, the tail, because it's getting the most light in this piece. So just a fun little extra step. You don't have to do it, but it just makes everything look pretty cool. And then highlights here, I have this layer set to lighten, and I went in and did some bounce light, mostly like on the feet, you'll see there, a little bit on the thigh, and some on the belly to kind of just show like a reflective light. It also has a little pink from the flower. And then that's my brightest highlight layer. It's overlay, set to clipping mask. And again, I just go to areas that I want it to be really bright, because if the tail's really bright and the wing is creating a shadow on the body, I needed to put some really bright light on like the head, because it's not being hit by the wing shadow, if that makes sense. And then brightening up the wings a little bit with an overlay layer, a little bit more on the head to bring it up even more, which that's kind of an extra step. Probably didn't have to do that, but it looked cool to me. And then for my rim lighting around the wings, I have that layer set to screen. And when I do that, I use like a soft airbrush to draw around the subject, and I do a little bit of Gaussian blur, not a lot, but just a little bit to kind of give it that glowing effect. And here's that green again to kind of set it into the painting. And there's our bouquet layer. And the flowers, I'll probably still change them a little bit. But I think I did in the last one, the last version, I think I did change the flowers some. Here they've all been kind of combined down. But one thing I did do, like I did on the last painting, was I used the selection tool, took a little bit of that flower and copied it, and then just a little bit of Gaussian blur on that down there, again, just to add a sense of depth of field and kind of take the focus away from the flowers, so you're more focused on the dragon in the painting. So see here, I think all of these have all been combined down. Oh. So yeah, you can see in my layers I have combined everything, and the final piece, like I said, where he's smaller, because that also overall looked cuter to me to make it like a smaller creature. And I'm trying to see if I did coloring on top of the flowers, which I'm pretty sure I did, but I forget my steps when I end up doing so many layers and having to combine it down. But yeah, that's the newest painting there. And then this is what it was originally based off of. Little dragonfly creature that I created in 2006, and did a this original was done in Copic marker, and you can see my original. I didn't do a lot of shading, I didn't do a lot of highlighting, I really didn't know where I was going with this. This was like right after I got out of art school, I think, when I started doing these little guys. I did several of them. I even did sculptures based on them. And then, like I said, the artwork's not bad. It just was lacking in kind of realism. I never did backgrounds. All my art was just like white, stark background. So working on backgrounds made a big difference. So, and there you go. So that is my little dragon flutter painting and little creatures that I've been doing. And this is the next one. Just sketched out the pose, and I'll be painting this one next. If you have a suggestion for a type of butterfly or moth that you would like to see turned into one of these guys, just let me know.